It was funny. Stan Collender was on with us last week, who said he thinks that he thought we were going to get a government shutdown. It was going to last over the weekend, and then they were going to come back on Monday and open the government.
He was right.
He was right. In fact, we need to give a shout out to Stan. What was accomplished then in these last 72 hours?
Nothing at all.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm writing an article for Bloomberg Businessweek this week talking about how this stalemate has deep roots. And this does nothing to end it because the parties have become so far apart just on the ideology. And the interesting thing is it wasn't always like this. If you look at Pew Research Center polls, as recently as 2006, there's only a few percentage point gap between Democrats and Republicans, ordinary voters, on their views about the positivity of immigration. And now Democrats are more than twice as likely to think that immigration is good for the country.
It's fascinating, right, how much that gap is widening. But do you think a lot of this, partisan bickering is actually being encouraged because on the flip side, the economy is doing so well, right? I mean, there isn't much to fight about on the economy at the very least, right?
Well, you could argue that, but you could also argue the opposite, which is when the economy is doing well, you would think people would be less afraid of losing their jobs to immigrants, and yet the white working class, which used to be kind of with the Democratic Party, has moved strongly to the Republican Party, and that goes along with their views about the fears of immigration.
Owen, I want to bring you into this conversation. What do you think is going to happen 3 weeks down the line?
I think that immigration is an enormous issue and I have to also bear in mind that I am an immigrant, so I've kind of got my boots on the ground, when I'm thinking about this. But the reality is that it's an enormously divisive issue because it isn't simply about immigrants and people losing their jobs to immigrants, but it's about globalization. And people associate globalization with overseas and foreigners, and then obviously immigrants are foreigners. So when you think about it in those terms, that's part of the reason that you've had this shift of people into the anti-immigrant camp. But there are over 600,000 kids that you were brought here as children, and something's going to have to get done for them.
It's interesting, Owen, because even leading up to this vote and this shutdown, we didn't really see much in terms of market reaction. In fact, they've largely shrugged it off, and we didn't even see any kind of retreat. And in fact, now, though, if you take a look at the markets, we're actually seeing a little bit of a relief rally. Now that seems like we've dodged a bullet once again and kicked the can down the road. What does it actually tell us right now about market sentiment at the moment?
Well, the easy answer, the very swift answer is we're in a bull market. It's going to take a lot more than a shutdown for 24 hours to stop this bull market. It is something that is going to go ahead for as long as it takes to sap up all of the additional demand. And there is a huge amount of enthusiasm about the tax cuts, and that is trumping just about every other factor right now. So what I anticipate is that that we are going to continue on this path, and that as long as volatility stays low, then this is still a bull market, and a bull market will just continue to climb that wall of worry.
Right. And there's still some, dichotomies, right now that you are seeing in the markets. Yes, we continue to see markets continue to rally. I have a chart for our viewers to see, Owen, but I'll try to highlight it as much as I can. What we are seeing here is something kind of odd because G#BTV76, you see the S&P rallying at records, but you see also high yield credit spreads. Those are widening a bit as well. Implied volatility also ticking up. Those two, especially volatility, usually only happens when the equity market dips, not when there is a rally. So is that at least a bearish signal for now when it comes to equities?
Well, I think that high yield spreads are starting to rally because treasuries moved to treasury yields hit a new recovery high in here today. So that is starting to have a knock-on effect for the high yield market. And I totally agree is that if we were to start seeing high yield spreads starting to trend higher, well, then that would be something that I think people would have to start paying attention to. The last time high yield spreads trended higher was back in 2013. And 2013 through to 2014, that's when markets started to lose a bit of momentum, and it was when we got high yield spreads then that had gone up to a high we haven't seen in years. That translated into the stock market going sideways. So, it was all the way 2015, 2016 that high yield spreads were kind of high, and that translated into this very volatile trading period for stock markets. So what happens on high yield spreads is going to have a knock-on effect, but there is a certain amount of a delayed reaction. it could be a 6-month lead before the market starts to roll over after high yield spreads start to rise.